to Robot Unicorn, hosted by my parents, Jess and Scott. I hope you enjoyed the episode.
Hey friends, so excited to have you back again on the show today. Today we are actually missing one of our very special people. Scott is not here today. He's not going to be here for just the next couple episodes, but don't worry, he will be back again. We just have a very busy season, and so I'm taking over for a little bit, but it's going to be good. We're going to have some really practical, a bit shorter episodes for you, answering some of the questions that you guys have been sending in. And this one in particular is a question that has been sent in quite a bit. So I'm really excited to talk about it. Let me just start by just reading the DM. So a parent wrote to me saying, Jess, I struggle with either being passive or yelling. I don't even know what a middle ground, confident voice sounds like. Do you have any ideas? Could you model to me what it sounds like to be confident? I really liked this question for a few reasons. First, I think it's a really common question that parents have. We want to be confident. We want to use what I like to call a strong or a firm voice with our kids. But at the same time, that can be really difficult, especially if that type of voice is never modeled to us, or if we tend to kind of veer towards yelling. And a pattern that I often see parents getting into is they'll use like a gentle, soft voice, like, oh, please, please don't hit your sister. Please don't hit your sister. And they keep using this gentle voice until all of a sudden they just get filled with anger and then they snap and then they yell. And then their child learns not to take their parent seriously until they start to yell, because they learn that you're not taking yourself seriously until you're starting to yell. So we get into this pattern. So I think that this parent's question was great. And today I'm going to cover exactly how we can kind of find that firm, confident leadership voice that we want to use as parents. So first, I want to talk about something that we talk about a lot on Robot Unicorn, which is the type of parenting that really helps kids thrive. And this type of parenting, and if you're in your car, maybe you'll say it with me, authoritative parenting. Now, there's been decades of research on authoritative parenting. And what authoritative parenting really is it's parenting that's high on warmth. So warmth is your unconditional love for your child. It's the way that you give them snuggles and love and say, no matter what you do, nothing can ever make me stop loving you. I'll always be here for you. I'll always be your parent. I'll always love you. The warmth is when your child falls, you comfort them. When they miss you at daycare and you see them at the end of the day, you say, hey, I was so excited to see you today. I really missed you too. That's warmth, and that's incredibly important. Now, what I find for many cycle breakers, warmth kind of is not the easy thing, but it makes sense to us, right? Maybe you weren't raised with warm or nurturing parents in that way, and so you know that that's something you want to do different, and you can kind of see the blueprint for how you can be warm. Now, the part that's very difficult often for cycle breaker parents, but just all parents, is the other really important piece of authoritative parenting, which is structure. So the high structure looks like having routines in place, having house rules, having boundaries, being able to actually stick to those boundaries, having things in place that help a child feel safe. And this is where the confident or the firm voice comes in, because often we can be really warm and loving, but if we can't have those boundaries that say, it's time for bed, it's 7:00, that's your bedtime, so let's go upstairs. I know you don't want to go to bed right now, but I know you need to get a good night of sleep, so I'm going to help you. Let's go to bed. If we can't have that type of confident, firm voice and that structure, our kids will end up putting themselves in that leadership role. They will start to, because they need the structure so bad, they need a leader so bad, that they will start to take the lead. So that's what we're going to talk about today, is that other piece of it, the structure, the confident voice, the firm voice that children really need to thrive. It's actually interesting because just last night, Scott and I were outside with our girls, and every night, pretty much, as soon as the weather gets nice, which hallelujah, in Ontario, finally we're getting some nice weather. So every night we go outside with our girls, and they usually bike on the street or skateboard or rollerblade or whatever it is they want to do. And my youngest, so our youngest, is almost 4, and her bedtime is around 7. And she really needs that 7:00 bedtime. Otherwise, she falls apart. So last night, though, we were having so much fun that we lost track of time, and it was 7:10. And I could see that she was starting to unravel a little bit. I could see she was getting really tired. And the way I could see it is she was becoming hyper, like so excited, so giddy, so giggling. And I knew it was time to bring her in. But when I said to her, hey, hon, it's time to go in, time to go to bed, Of course, she wasn't like, yeah, sure, Mom, I would love to stop playing and go to bed. Definitely not. So what did she do? She was like, I'm not going in. You can't make me. So this is a good example of when I really need to step into that role of the firm and confident leader. I know she is never going to want to go to bed. She's never going to want to leave outside. I could give her warnings. I could tell her about all the great things we're going to do at bedtime. I could threaten that we're never going outside again. It doesn't matter. That's not going to compute to her because her emotional brain has taken over. So I said, hun, I'm going to help you get inside. It's time for bed. And I held her hand. And then at a certain point, I actually carried her. I picked her up and took her in the house and took her all the way upstairs to the bathroom. And she was so mad. If you lived on my street, you could probably hear her screaming. I stayed calm. I knew that she needed me to help her make the choice that was going to help her have a better day the next day, end up having a better sleep that night. And I knew because she's only 4, she's not able to make that choice for herself when the alternative choice is playing outside with her sisters. So she was mad, she was yelling. And in that moment, my firm and confident voice wasn't harsh. It just was, I know you need to go to bed. I'm going to help you get to bed. And I didn't say all sorts of things. She cried and she was so mad. But eventually, it only took about a couple minutes. She understood that I'm going to be firm with this boundary and that she might as well allow me to help her get ready for bed because I wasn't going to change my mind. And sometimes I'll even say to my kids, I'm not going to change my mind on this, just so that they can have the relief of knowing they don't have to keep pushing back. And that is a good example of being a firm and confident leader. Doesn't mean you have to say all sorts of things to your kids. It doesn't mean that you have to really try and talk them through it. You can acknowledge their feeling like, hey, I know you want to keep playing. I totally get it. And it's time for bed. I'm going to help you get ready for bed. That is how a child ends up learning to rest in your leadership. The reason it took my daughter only a couple minutes to end up being okay with the fact that I was going to put her to bed last night is because I've done this with her so many times that now she knows when mom says it's time for bed, it's time for bed. I can push back as long as I want, but she's still going to put me to bed. So that's the really important part. That's hard at first when you start setting those boundaries, especially when you're used to threatening or punishing or like trying to bribe your child to get in. All of those things actually make you lose your credibility as a leader. So another thing I think about when I think about leadership for our kids is I actually think about these 2 bosses that I used to have. I think I've talked about this before, but I started working really young. I was working in a tulip greenhouse by the time I was, I want to say, probably 11 years old. And when I worked there, I had a boss. And that boss was angry. He would yell. He would get really angry at his employees, even me, an 11-year-old girl. One of my clearest memories of this boss was that if we weren't doing something fast enough or we weren't doing something the way that he wanted, he would kind of sneak up on us and then start yelling in your ear. And so what that does to you as an employee when you're worried that your boss is going to yell at you at any given time is it puts you on high alert. So your body's always kind of in this state of alarm, right? Like, when is he going to yell at me? And you start to operate out of a place of fear, not out of a place of respect of the boss. So I was a good worker there, but the only reason I was a good worker was because I was terrified of getting yelled at by my boss. And I kind of think about that sometimes in terms of parenting. So long term with that boss, I didn't want to keep working there. The longer I worked there, the more I wanted to get out. The longer that I worked there, the less I respected him. And actually, the longer I worked there, the less I actually did what he said because the respect I had for him kept dropping. The more he would yell at me and the other employees, and the more he would show up as a boss who was inconsistent. Some days he would actually even show up happy. Other days he would show up angry. The rules would all of a sudden change on me and I'd be getting yelled at for something I didn't know was a rule, something I wasn't allowed to do. For example, I remember one day I was like talking to a friend and we were always allowed to talk while we were working. We'd be like planting tulips actually. And I remember I was talking to a friend and then all of a sudden he was behind me yelling at me saying, "You're not allowed to talk." I didn't know that was a rule, right? So your body is always in the state of stress and you're operating from the state of stress. So that was that one boss, and I quit that job as soon as I possibly could and got out of there and never wanted to work there again because I was afraid and I didn't want to work in a place where I was operating from fear. Now, fast forward a few years and I was at university, and during my undergraduate degree, I actually worked for the Center for Students with Disabilities. And there I had an incredible boss. He was like a mentor to me. So when he had to correct me, because we all need correction sometimes, he would be curious. "Hey, Jess, I wonder why you did things like that." He would remind me of expectations. I was a university student. If I showed up late, hey, just a reminder, I need you to be here at 9. Can you help me understand why that's tough? He would try to work with me. He wanted me to succeed. So he was very clear about the expectations. He was clear about the things that he needed from me. When there was an issue, he would get curious and say, hey, help me understand. Why is this hard? How can I make you successful here? Is there something else you need to learn? Is there something you don't know? Is there something I'm doing that I can do better to support you as your leader? So I'm sure you see where I'm going there. With this second boss, I wanted to do well for him because I respected him. He, to me, was such a mentor, such a leader, someone who I really looked up to. And I was like, I want to be like you someday. I want to be a boss who's curious and kind and compassionate, but still pushes me to be the best version of myself as an employee. And so I worked with him for a very long time because I respected him. And I did a really good job because I respected him. And even now being a boss and parenting, I see a lot of parallels to this. So similar for us as parents, when we can be the leader who can set expectations in the home, right? Things like, hey, this is when bedtime is. Hey, this is how long you're going to have for screen times today. And we can help our children meet these expectations by seeing the best in our kids, by knowing that they want to thrive and our job is to help them do it. When our kids have a hard time, we're curious with them, right? A good leader, and back to that structured parenting, is curious. If we're always having an issue with our kids every time, I think it's the psychologist Ross Greene who says this. The question isn't, why won't my child meet my expectations, which kind of says my child is bad and they don't want to be good for me. The question is, why can't my child meet my expectations? We're curious, just like that boss was for me. And when we are respectable as parents and we show up for our kids in the way that we would hope a boss might show up for us or our own parent may have showed up for us, what happens is we build respect. And when we respect our children and they feel respected by us, they want to work with us. And I see this a lot. Scott and I actually see this a lot in our kids as they're getting older. They come to us with their issues. They want to talk to us and they will do what we say, even if they don't necessarily like it, right? Like one of our rules lately has been cleaning up the table after dinner every night, but there's a mutual respect there. We say the rules and we state the boundaries in a way that helps them feel respected and loved. And in return, they are starting to follow our rules with less and less pushback. So I think that's a helpful example to just keep in your mind as you're trying to figure out how to be that leader that your child needs, thinking about the type of leader that you would want and thinking about those best bosses that you've had in your life and what they did, because a lot of that can be transferred to the home.
Hey friends, so at pickup last week, our daughter asked Scott a truly kind of tricky question in front of her younger siblings. Scott was telling me that when he heard a question like this, he used to panic, but this time he had a plan. And he said to our daughter, "Thank you for asking. Let's talk tonight when we've got privacy." And that's a line that he learned straight from our new body safety and consent course at Nurtured First. So this new body safety and consent course is taught by me. So Jess, if you listen to this podcast, you know me. I'm a child therapist and a mom of 3, and I have taught body safety and consent education for years. This course takes all my years of experience teaching this education and gives you calm, age-appropriate language for body parts, consent, and boundaries. You'll learn how to teach your kids that no means no. You'll learn how to teach them to read facial cues. You'll talk about safe and unsafe touch, and you'll even teach them about their uh-oh feeling. There's guidance inside this course for the real life stuff, like tickling that goes too far, and even the difference between a secret and a surprise. We made this course at Nurture First because research shows that body safety education helps kids speak up sooner, and we want that for our family, for Scott and I, but also for you. So check the course out at nurturedfirst.com/bodysafety, and to save 10%, use the code ROBOTUNICORN. And just full disclosure here, we are the creators of this course, and we're so proud of it.
Okay, so now I want to go back to the how can we be firm without yelling? I like to talk about the 3 C's, so let's go over them together. So first, we have confidence. Let's go back to the story of last night. It's 7:10 and my daughter needs to be in bed by 7, so I'm setting the boundary, hey, it's time to go inside. I'm going to help you get inside because I know you're not going to want to go. I need to have confidence in this. And being a firm leader, part of it is being confident in the boundaries, rules, and expectations that you're setting for your kids. A huge challenge I see with a lot of the parents that I support is they will set a boundary like, hey, you have to help me clean up. As a family, we clean up the table after dinner, right? They'll set that boundary. Or, hey, you're not allowed to hit your sibling. If you keep hitting your sibling, we're going to have to go to a different room together because I can't have you guys together if you keep fighting. But the thing that I think a lot of parents struggle with is confidence in that when their child starts pushing back. So before you set a boundary, before you state a rule in your home, you have to ask yourself, am I willing to stick to this? Am I willing to stick to this? And am I willing to hold firm to this, even if my child pushes back, doesn't like it, is angry? I even think about screens. Let's say you have a screen boundary of like, hey, you can watch one episode of Bluey, and after that, we're going to turn it off and go outside. Okay, now the next episode of Bluey is already loading. Do you feel confident turning that off for your child and saying, okay, just like we said, one episode and now it's time to go outside? Or if they're really pushing back on you and getting really angry, are you going to be like, okay, fine, I don't care, fine, watch another episode. But then you get angry when they're sitting there for the next 40 minutes watching TV because they never turned it off themselves. So that's a good thing just to check yourself on before you start setting a rule, an expectation. Is this something I feel confident in? If I say this, am I going to be able to follow through with it? The next part, and I know like we talk about this all the time and it's hard, but calm. So we want to be confident. We also want to be calm. So it's really important to know that being firm is different than yelling. I can be firm, and I am firm with my kids a lot. I can be firm with my kids and I can say something like, this, I said this literally a couple nights ago. So another one of the expectations that we have in our house is before we have dinner, the kids usually like to play in the living room. And they usually like to take out pretty much every toy that we own, and that's fine. But my boundary is I need you to clean that up before we go and sit and have dinner together, because I know that we have dinner and then we have to clean that up. And then we like to play outside until bedtime. So I know if they don't clean it up then, it's going to be my job to clean up after they all go to bed. And I know that I don't feel good if I have to put them all to bed and then go and clean up the whole living room that's covered in toys. So this is just part of the daily routine in our house. And my kids know this and they're usually good about it. But the other night, for whatever reason, they just weren't interested in cleaning up. And so I had to come in with my firm voice and say, girls, I need you to clean up your toys before you can sit and have dinner with Dad and I. And so Scott and I were at the table waiting for them. Dinner was on the table. Everything was ready and they didn't want to do it. And then my 9-year-old goes, you're torturing us. You won't let us eat dinner. And there's probably honestly at like 4 toys on the ground at this point. And I'm like, girls, I'm going to let you eat dinner. This is not torture. I know you're capable of cleaning this up. So clean it up. You can put a song on if you want while you clean up. You can do whatever you need to do. And as soon as you've cleaned up, let's come and eat dinner together. So that's what my firm voice sounded like. And the firm part of it was that I was holding true to my boundary that we would eat dinner as a family once they'd cleaned up those last few toys. Now they ended up turning on like the cleanup song or something, and they listened to that song and they cleaned it all up and it was fine. And then they came to the table, but my oldest was still like, oh, Mom, that was so mean. And so I had to explain to her that part of our family structure is to be able to, stick to these little rhythms that we put in place, and to help her see that it's not mean to say, hey, this is what we do every night and we're going to do that again tonight. But it might feel harsh because she didn't want to do it, right? So I can ask her, I can get curious. So what felt mean about that? Help me understand. Help me understand why that was tough for you. Help me understand why you didn't want to clean up tonight. And we did that. And before long, we'd all moved on. And then we went outside and played. And after they went to bed, the toys were cleaned up. And so I was able to rest. And I know that that works better for me as a parent too. And so sometimes we can put those little systems in place so that we actually as parents can feel less burned out too. And I know that's an example for a bit older of kids. And some of you have younger toddlers. But even in the younger years, I would do that with my children. So when they were 2 and 3, I would help them clean up the living room before dinner. And then as they got older, they were able to start doing that on their own. But the importance of being calm is that what we know about a child's brain is if we're yelling at them, this increases the cortisol, the stress hormone in their brain. The more stressed out a child is, the more inattentive they are, the harder it is for them to listen. They will do things like either challenging behaviors like hitting, biting, or kicking just because their body gets in kind of a frantic state when we're yelling at them, or they might shut down. So we don't want to yell. That's not confident leadership. And if I think back to those two bosses I was talking to you about, when the one boss would yell at me, at first I would do what he said, right? When I just started working there, because I was afraid of him. But over time, I built resentment and anger towards him, and I didn't respect him, and I no longer wanted to do what he said. Whereas the other boss, who was calm and compassionate and curious, but still firm, still had his expectations, I wanted to work with him, and I knew that he wanted to work with me too. So that's just another helpful example of why being calm is important. And if you don't feel calm, maybe taking a minute to take a deep breath, step outside, regulate yourself before you start setting your boundary. And then we've talked about this already. So confident, calm, and being curious. A confident leader will also ask questions to try and understand what's happening. So sometimes I think we come in and we think there's certain situations where we do just have to set a boundary, right? Like I was saying with my daughter who didn't want to come up inside after playing outside. I knew having a conversation with her wasn't going to work. But there are times where, like I was saying, your child is just having a hard time always meeting your expectations. You feel like you're always getting into these arguments. And in that case, a good leader is curious. They want to understand, why are we always having a hard time? So I might do something like go to my child's room and bring a tea. They all love tea, especially if they're in there and they're mad at me about something, right? And I'd be like, hey, I'm noticing after school every day we're having a hard time. Help me understand. What's going on? What's up? I love the question, what's up? I also love the question, help me understand. Or just like the phrase, or tell me more about. When we can do that and we just get on our child's level, we connect with them in a deeper way, that also helps them trust us. They know that we want to work with them. We want to be on their team. We want to work together. And that is so incredibly important for developing your relationship with your child. Going back to authoritative parenting, again, we need warmth and we need structure. That's how we work together with our kids. So finally, one thing that a lot of parents I work with find really helpful when they're trying to find their calm parenting voice is to practice. So like I mentioned, you may have only ever had yelling modeled to you, or passiveness or permissiveness, and you might not be actually familiar of what it actually sounds like to use a calm parenting voice. And so I know this is silly, but it might be helpful for you to look in the mirror and practice setting a boundary. It might be helpful for you to talk to your friends and be like, how do you set a calm boundary? And practice saying it out loud. The more you practice using that voice, the one that's calm, the one that's firm, and the one that's in control. I guess that's another thing that's really helpful is we want to stay in control of our voice, and a yelling voice is not in control. When I'm yelling, when I'm that angry, I know I'm totally out of control of my body, and that doesn't feel good, and that doesn't feel good for a child either. So practicing in the mirror, practicing in little moments that aren't heated, right? Asking yourself before you say something, okay, how am I going to say this in a way that's firm but also kind? That can be really helpful so that you can access that in those moments that are hard. Also thinking outside of the moment that's challenging about where do I actually want to hold these boundaries and where is it okay maybe if I am a little bit more flexible? That can be also really helpful in those situations. It's also important to know, because I think, to go back to the question, like I struggle with being passive or yelling, that it's better for our kids if they just know the clear expectation off the bat. So if I'm going to come to my kids and I'm going to say, guys, you have one episode that you can watch and then we're turning it off. Either you're turning it off or I am. That is much better for my children because they know exactly what to expect than for me to be passive and be like, hey, yeah, okay, you can watch some TV and then like, coming up, hey guys, do you think you could turn it off soon? And then coming up again, hey guys, remember I told you to turn it off, sweeties, can you please turn it off? And then come back again, guys, why haven't you turned it off? And then again and start yelling at them, right? It's so much better just to be clear right off the bat with your children. Then they know exactly what to expect. And you don't have to go through this pattern of being passive, and then yelling. And know that it's okay if they're mad. My kids get mad at me a lot. less and less as they get older and they start to understand the rules and the boundaries. And we have a lot of like rhythms, I would say, to our day. Like I was saying, they get home from school, they get to do their homework and have a snack and then play outside for a little bit and then watch a show while we make dinner. And then they have to clean up the living room. Then we have dinner. Then we go clean up dinner together as a family. And then we go outside and we play. And then we come in and get ready for bed. We have these rhythms to our day that also really help because our child knows what's coming next. And they're not every day like, oh, I wonder what we're doing tonight. Oh, I don't know what the expectation. Can I watch TV for 3 hours? Are they going to force me to play outside? I don't know because every day is different. Having that structure and that routine can also really help you as a parent in your leadership and also helps a child know what's going to come next. And that's part of that authoritative parenting that we talked about right off the bat, warmth and structure. So just to end this episode off, I have a few personal examples for you. So first, I've been making notes on these examples. First, the kids had made a huge mess in the living room. They were telling me that they weren't going to clean it up. So that's the one that I was already telling you. We have this as part of our routine. And my firm voice in that situation sounds like, kids, I need you to clean this up. I can wait. I am not going to change my mind. You need to clean up the living room. And I understand that you don't want to. That's how my firm voice, my mom voice sounds in that situation. And then they might say, but I don't want to. I don't like cleaning up. I hear you. We can put on a song. Do you want to put on a song while we clean it up? Let's do that. Then I might put on the cleanup song or another song that they really like just to kind of get the good going. So we can still work with our children to try and set them up for success while at the same time holding the boundaries. Okay, here's another example. I'm thinking like back to when my kids were little and we might have hitting, right? So when a toddler is hitting a baby or the toddler is hitting their big sister or whatever it is, I would come in with my firm voice and go, stop. I will not let you hit your sister. And I would physically place my body between the two. And I might even hold my toddler's hands. And then I would say something like, I know you've got hitting energy. Let's go let it out somewhere else. And then we would go and I might even take her to the kitchen. We might do some high fives. We might do some big clapping just to get that energy out in a different way. But I would intervene and show them what else they could do with that energy that wasn't hurting. Now, if they were hitting because they were mad because they wanted something or whatever, then I might say, stop. You are not allowed to hit your sister. Hitting is not an okay way to get a toy, and you're not allowed to have that toy because you're hitting to try and get it. Let's go to the other room together. We're just going to try and calm down for a minute, and then we can talk about what we can do next. And that is all I would say. I don't keep going into explanations. I don't go over and over, but that is what a confident, calm leader does. They don't yell at their child for hitting. They don't throw all sorts of threats and bribes and all sorts of things in there. They go, they step in, and then they show the child what they want them to do. And repeated exposures to showing your child what you want them to do in those tough moments eventually leads to them doing that themselves without you there. I've seen this happen in my own life, just with my kids as they get older. It's incredible to see that the way I've responded to them when they've hit, when they've had big tantrums, when they've wanted something so bad that they want to like throw things against the wall. Now, as they get older, 4, 6, and 8, they have started to do the things that Scott and I did with them on their own without necessarily needing us. And it's really cool to see. So if you have younger toddlers, just know that all of those times that you're repeatedly like showing your child what to do, eventually they learn how to take that on themselves, especially as they reach that 5 to 7 age when their brain is maturing more and they can access like logical thinking and reasoning in their brain during those tough moments. So remember, again, being firm, being confident, being that leader eventually shows your child what they can do in those tough moments. So I got some homework for you today, and that is to see when you can use your confident voice and to think about people in your life who have modeled that voice to you. So whether it's someone you listen to on a podcast, whether it's your own parents, maybe an uncle or aunt, maybe someone that you know, maybe it's a friend of yours who's really good at having that calm, confident voice. I want you to think about the people in your life who you know who have that voice and try and think about what it is that makes you feel safe around those people. Because the truth is that dealing with your children in that firm, confident, but loving, like that still having that warmth in your voice, that is a skill for relationships that can be transferable to all relationships. And something I think about for my kids is that I want them to have a parent who treats them with respect, who talks to them, being clear about expectations without fearing their response, so that eventually they can learn that it's okay for them to be confident, calm, direct, and firm at times as well. I want to model that to them. I don't want to model to them being passive, being permissive, or yelling, because I know that what I model to them is how they'll eventually talk to their friends, talk to their partners down the road, talk to people that they work with. And so I want to be that boss that for me made me feel safe and equipped and empowered to want to do a good job and to want to work well. That's what I want for my kids as well. So I hope that you really enjoyed this episode. If you did, give us a rating or a review and let us know how you find it without Scott here. I know that there's probably a lot of things that he may have added in here. I tried to really take in any of the feedback that he would have or places he'd be skeptical and address that already off the bat. But of course, you're always welcome to send in questions, and Scott and I can always do a follow-up episode with any thing that you think he would have maybe interjected or been skeptical about. And if you want more on kind of the calm, confident leadership and you have a toddler or preschooler, our Parenting Little Kids course, just a little plug for that, is a fantastic course. And we talk about a lot of this in the course and then how to actually implement it in terms of if your child's hitting or biting or kicking or having big tantrums. So that could be a really helpful course for you to take if you want more on being a confident leader. Anyways, I've actually really enjoyed this discussion. This was fun for me to just be able to talk to you about all the things. This is something I'm so passionate about because I think as you find that confident voice, you will feel better about your parenting and you will feel more confident in yourself. So thank you so much, and I will talk to you the next episode.
Hey friends, thank you so much for listening to today's episode. We are glad that you are here. If you enjoyed today's episode and found it interesting, we'd really appreciate it if you'd leave a rating and a review. Scott and I actually sit down together and read them all. A 5-star rating helps us share our podcast and get these important messages out there. Thank you so much for listening, and we can't wait to talk to you again next time.